Chapter 1. The Dinner That Changed Everything. The first thing I remember about that night was the music, soft piano drifting through the restaurant, delicate and expensive sounding like everything else in that place. The air smelled faintly of rosemary and seared steak, and the hum of polite conversation filled the room. I'd been here before. We'd been here before on anniversaries, promotions, birthdays. It was the kind of place where the waiter knew how to pour wine like he was handling a newborn. That evening, though, it felt different. I lost my job just 3 days earlier. 12 years at a marketing firm, gone in a single restructuring email. I'd spent the past few days trying to keep it together, sending out resumes, pretending I was fine. I wasn't. I'd hoped tonight would be a chance to talk, to feel human again. Claudia sat across from me in her cream-colored blazer, scrolling her phone with the same detached focus she used at work. She looked stunning, as always, polished, poised, perfectly put together. Her gold earrings caught the low light, and her perfume, that crisp, floral one I bought her last Christmas, drifted across the table. But she didn't look up. Not once. The waiter came to take our order, and she flashed her perfect smile, the one she used on clients and people she didn't care about. "I'll have the seared scallops," she said, then looked at me, waiting. "A steak," I said finally. "Medium rare." Her eyes flickered briefly, assessing, like I'd chosen the wrong answer. Then she nodded, lips tight. We sat in silence for a while after that. The restaurant's lighting seemed dimmer than usual, shadows collecting in the corners of her face. I reached for my glass of water, trying to fill the gap. "How was work?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her thumb scrolled across her phone one last time before she set it down beside her plate, folding her manicured hands neatly. "Busy," she said flatly. "As usual." "Yeah, I can imagine." She didn't ask how my job search was going. Didn't ask how I was holding up. I waited, half expecting some warmth to slip through, a hand across the table, maybe a quiet "we'll get through this." That's what I wanted. Not much, just something human. But instead, she leaned back in her chair, tilted her head, and said, "Dave, I've been thinking." Those 4 words, the universal prelude to something bad. I forced a small smile. "That sounds serious." "It is," she said, folding her napkin precisely, the way she always did when she was about to drop news like a verdict. "About us. About how we manage things." I blinked. "Okay, you've always been good at taking care of things," she said slowly, as if choosing each word from shelf. "Bills, groceries, coffee. I appreciate that." "Thank you," I said cautiously. "But," she continued, her tone sharpening, "I think it's time we adjust how we live, how we handle responsibilities." The waiter returned with our wine, interrupting the tension. He poured it, a red so dark it looked like spilled ink, and smiled, oblivious to the bomb waiting to drop. "Everything okay here?" "Perfect," Claudia said, still smiling that professional smile. He left. Then she leaned in slightly, her voice calm and firm, the way she talked in board meetings. "From now on, everything between us is going to be 50-50. I stared at her. 50-50, yes. Equal. Completely. I'm only responsible for myself. You're responsible for yourself. We'll split the bills, the chores, everything. Fairly." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her right. "You mean like roommates?" She gave a small shrug, sipping her wine. "If that's what you want to call it. It's just more balanced this way. I've been carrying more than my share lately." "Carrying?" I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat. "Claudia, you make 3 times what I make. Or made." "That's not the point," she said sharply. "It's about principle. About equality." "Equality," I repeated. The word tasted strange. "You think equality means splitting groceries and electricity bills right after I lose my job?" Her expression didn't flicker. "It's not punishment, Dave. It's responsibility. You need to understand how much I already do. I can't be expected to carry both of us." I set my fork down slowly. "Carry both of us?" She met my eyes, unwavering. "Yes, you've had a good run coasting, but it's time you pulled your weight again." I laughed, quietly this time, because it was that or lose control. "Coasting? Claudia, I've been working 60-hour weeks for years. You've never once had to think about rent, groceries, gas, or laundry detergent. And now," she interrupted, her tone razor smooth. You don't have that job anymore, which means it's time for a reset. There it was. Clean, simple, corporate, like firing an employee. I could feel my heartbeat in my jaw. The air around us seemed heavier. The laughter from nearby tables suddenly sounded too loud, too far away. So, I said finally, forcing calm into my voice, "This is what you wanted to tell me? That you're done being my wife and you'd rather be my accountant?" She flinched just a little, but recovered instantly. "Don't twist this, Dave. It's not about love. It's about fairness. I'm still here, aren't I?" I leaned back, exhaling slowly. "For now." She rolled her eyes. "Don't make this dramatic. I just think it's healthier this way. You focus on getting back on your feet, and I'll focus on me." There was that word again, me, always perfectly centered in her world. The waiter arrived with our food, blissfully unaware that he was serving dinner at a divorce preview. Seared scallops for the lady, and steak for the gentleman. "Thank you," I said automatically. When he left, Claudia began cutting into her food with mechanical precision. I just sat there, staring at my plate. My appetite was gone. I looked at her, really looked. The perfect posture, the diamond ring that caught the light. The calm expression of someone who believed she was entirely justified. 7 years together, and this was how she handled my worst week. No empathy, no warmth, just spreadsheets and self-preservation disguised as independence. Finally, I picked up my fork and knife, slicing through the steak with slow, deliberate care. "So, just to be clear," I said softly, "everything is 50-50 now." "Yes," she said, without hesitation. "Bills, chores, coffee, everything." I nodded. "All right then." She blinked, perhaps expecting a protest, a fight, something. But I gave her nothing. Instead, I set my utensils down, folded my napkin, and leaned back in my chair. The piano music swelled in the background, and I found myself smiling. Not bitterly, not angrily, just calmly. "Okay," I said. Her eyes flickered, uncertain for the first time that night. That's it. Silence settled between us like dust after an explosion. She went back to her meal, but her rhythm was off now. Her fork clinked against the plate too loudly. I stared out the window at the city lights, my reflection merging with hers in the glass. Something inside me shifted quietly, decisively. If she wanted equality, she was about to get it, down to the last coffee bean. And that was the moment Operation Petty Revenge began, not with rage or tears, but with one calm, quiet okay. Chapter 2, Coffee Wars begin. The next morning started with sunlight creeping through the blinds, thin, golden lines stretching across the hardwood floor and slicing through the quiet of the condo. Normally, by now, the kitchen would smell of espresso and toasted bread. Normally, I'd already be halfway through making Claudia's breakfast, her favorite. 2 slices of whole grain toast, light butter, 1 poached egg, and that impossibly complicated almond milk cappuccino with exactly half a teaspoon of sugar. But that morning, I did nothing. I woke up before her, on purpose. Not because I couldn't sleep, though, truth be told, her words from last night had replayed in my mind like a scratched record, but because I wanted to be ready when she woke. Ready to let her new world begin. The 50-50 world she so confidently declared over a $200 dinner. So I got up, quietly, made my own coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with the paper open and Biscuit, our golden retriever, curled at my feet. For once, the condo felt peaceful. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for, the rustle of sheets, the dull thump of her slippers on the floor, and that half-annoyed, half-groggy sigh she always made when she didn't smell coffee yet. "Dave." Her voice carried from the bedroom, thick with sleep. "Morning," I called, without looking up from the paper. Silence. Then footsteps, sharp, impatient. She appeared in the doorway, hair tied back messily, wearing her silk robe. The look on her face was confusion first, then disbelief. "You didn't make coffee?" she asked. I looked up at her, holding my own steaming mug. "Nope." Her eyes darted to the coffee machine, then back to me. "You're kidding." I took a slow sip. "You said last night we're going 50-50 from now on, right?" Her brow furrowed. I didn't mean, just being fair," I said, turning a page of the paper. "Figured I'd make mine." you'd make yours. Equality and all that. The disbelief on her face melted into irritation. Dave, I don't know how to use that machine. It's complicated. I said, pretending to think. Then maybe it's time you learn. Can't keep relying on me forever. Her jaw tightened. You're being childish. I'm being equal. She stood there, lips pressed into a thin line, before finally marching toward the counter like she was heading into battle. I hid my grin behind the newspaper. The espresso machine, a stainless steel monster with 1,000 buttons and a frothing wand that sounded like a jet engine, sat gleaming on the counter. I'd bought it for her birthday 2 years ago, and she'd never touched it once. Now, she stood before it like someone trying to defuse a bomb. Okay, she muttered to herself, examining it. This button, no wait. I watched over the top of the paper as she pressed one button. The machine beeped angrily. Steam hissed. Water sputtered. Claudia jumped back. Jesus! Biscuit lifted his head from the floor, ears perked. Careful, I said mildly. That's the rinse cycle. I know that, she snapped. Do you? Her glare could have melted steel. For the next few minutes, I was treated to the most entertaining show I'd seen in months. Claudia, the woman who could negotiate million-dollar deals and intimidate corporate boards, was now crouched in front of an espresso machine, squinting at the manual like it was written in hieroglyphs. At one point, she managed to grind the beans, half the kitchen filled with the rich aroma of coffee, but then she forgot to lock the portafilter. When she hit the brew button, the machine sputtered violently and sprayed a thin stream of hot coffee across the counter. God damn it, she hissed, grabbing paper towels. Need a hand? I asked sweetly. No, are you sure? You're losing more coffee than you're making. Go read your newspaper, Dave. I smiled behind my mug, just offering support. 50-50 support. She ignored me, muttering under her breath as she wiped the counter. After several false starts, one near explosion, and a few unholy noises from the espresso beast, she finally managed to produce a cup. She took a sip, then immediately spit it back into the sink. Oh, for God's sake, she barked. It tastes like mud. Did you use filtered water? Her head snapped toward me. What? The filter jug, Claudia. You have to use filtered water or it tastes like burnt pennies. She closed her eyes, inhaled sharply through her nose, and said nothing. I glanced at the clock. You're going to be late for work. I'm aware, she said through gritted teeth, pouring the failed espresso down the drain. I turned a page. You just grab one from the cafe downstairs. I'm not spending $8 on coffee, she shot back. Right, because you're saving money now that we're splitting everything evenly. Her glare could have burned a hole through me. She rummaged in the bread box, yanked out 2 slices of bread, and shoved them into the toaster. Biscuit wandered into the kitchen, tail wagging hopefully. Claudia glanced down at him. Not now, Biscuit. He looked at her, then at me, and came straight to my side. Smart dog. The toaster popped up. She grabbed the slices and immediately yelped. Damn it, too hot. I asked. She dropped the toast on her plate, shaking her fingers. It's fine. The edges were black. Smoke curled faintly upward. Looks artisanal, I said. Eat your newspaper. I laughed softly. She buttered the charred toast with the aggression of someone filing a lawsuit. Then, realizing she was late, she stormed down the hallway, heels clicking like gunshots. A few moments later, I heard drawers opening and closing, hangers clattering, the sound of perfume spritzing, all in her usual morning rush rhythm, but a little faster now. I took another sip of coffee. Perfect temperature. Smooth. Balanced. When she finally returned, dressed sharply for work, she looked composed again, at least on the surface. But her hair had one rebellious strand out of place, and there was a faint smear of coffee on her wrist. Rough morning? I asked. She didn't answer. Just grabbed her bag, her car keys, and her phone. At the door, she paused, turned back, and said, You're enjoying this, aren't you? I looked up, met her eyes, and smiled faintly. Just practicing equality. Her jaw clenched. Then she opened the door, stepped out, and slammed it shut behind her. The echo of it lingered for a moment. Then silence. Biscuit trotted over to me, tail thumping. I reached down, scratching behind his ear. Well, buddy, I said quietly, day 1 seems promising. He allowed a soft whine and laid his head on my lap. The espresso machine still sat there on the counter, dribbling the last of its chaos into the drip tray. Claudia's failed coffee experiment had left brown stains on the marble and a faint smell of bitterness in the air. Fitting, really. I stood, cleaned the counter, refilled my mug, and glanced out the window. Down on the street, I could see her car pulling out of the parking lot, a white SUV slicing neatly into morning traffic. I waited until she was gone, then walked over to my desk by the window. The leather-bound notebook sat open there, the one I used for work notes before the layoff. I flipped to a clean page, picked up a pen, and wrote in big, neat letters. Day 1 of 50-50 marriage. Coffee chaos. Then I leaned back in my chair, smiled to myself, and took another slow, deliberate sip of coffee, the kind that tastes even better when it's brewed with a hint of revenge. Chapter 3. The Spreadsheet Queen. By Tuesday evening, the tension in the condo had solidified into something almost tangible, like a thick, invisible fog neither of us could see through, but both could feel pressing against our skin. Claudia hadn't said much since the coffee incident. Just a few clipped sentences in the mornings, some muttered comments about immature behavior, and long silences during dinner. I could tell something was brewing behind those perfectly arched eyebrows. And not coffee this time. She was planning something. When Claudia is quiet, it doesn't mean peace, it means preparation. It started with the printer. On Wednesday morning, as I made my own coffee and fed biscuit, the printer in the home office roared to life. Not one page, not two. A steady, rhythmic work click for several minutes. I walked to the doorway, mug in hand. She was there, hair tied in a tight ponytail, still in her work blouse but barefoot, eyes locked on her laptop screen like a surgeon. "Morning," I said. She didn't look up. "Morning. Printer sounds busy." Hum. What are you working on?" "Something productive." Her tone had that frosty efficiency that used to intimidate interns at her firm. "Ah," I said, sipping my coffee. "A mystery." She ignored me. The printer spat out another page, then another. When it finally stopped, she gathered the stack neatly, tapped the edges against the desk, and turned to face me. "You want it 50-50? She said, voice crisp. "You got it." She handed me the stack. I flipped through it. At first, I thought it was a budget sheet. Then I realized, no, it was the budget sheet. It had tabs, color codes, formulas, and footnotes. Each page labeled meticulously. Household utilities, shared subscriptions, grocery allocations, chore hours, miscellaneous consumption. And at the top of every page, in bold font, a title. The 50-50 agreement, Claudia and Dave. "You made a contract?" I asked. "It's not a contract," she said, crossing her arms. "It's a transparency document. Looks like a contract. It's a working draft." I glanced back down at it. The electricity bill was broken into 2 columns, her usage and his usage. Next to each was a percentage. "Hold on," I said, frowning. "How did you even measure electricity usage separately?" She smiled, the kind of smile that made stockholders nervous. "I took last month's total, divided average use based on appliance ownership and time spent home. You work from home now, so yours is 61%. 61? Yes. You pulled that out of data, Dave." "I use data." I stared at her. "You use data to make me pay for the coffee machines, standby light? Electricity isn't free." I flipped to the next page. Water usage. Again, divided, with footnotes referencing shower duration and dishwasher load contribution. You counted how long I shower?" "I've been timing for the last 2 weeks," she said, perfectly calm. "On average, your showers are 3 minutes longer than mine. That adds up. You've been timing me." "Efficiency study," she said matter-of-factly. I nearly laughed, but something about her serious expression made me realize she was dead serious. I kept reading. The grocery sheet had an entire table for caloric consumption. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, pointing at it. "You're splitting grocery costs by calorie count?" "Yes," she said. "I only eat 2 meals a day. You snack. It's unfair to divide evenly." "You calculated calories per dollar?" "Exactly." There was a chart. A literal bar chart labeled cost per 100 calories, his versus hers. It looked like something from an economics presentation. I turned another page. streaming subscriptions. She had divided Netflix, Hulu, and Spotify bills based on hours streamed. How did you even get this data? Netflix viewing history, Spotify Wrapped, and Wi-Fi activity logs. I blinked. You're tracking my Wi-Fi? It's our Wi-Fi. Claudia, this is psychotic. It's equitable. Her tone was ice. She folded her arms, chin tilted high, clearly proud of herself. This way, everything's fair. No confusion. No resentment. Right, I muttered. Because nothing screams love like a shared expense audit. She ignored the jab, tapping her nails on the counter like a metronome. Also, she added, I itemize common areas. Furniture, appliances, decor, everything has a shared ownership value. If something breaks or wears out, we each cover depreciation proportionally. You made depreciation schedules for furniture? Over 5 years. Straight line method. It's all in there. Jesus Christ, Claudia. Language, she said flatly. I tossed the papers back on the counter. You know, most couples talk things out. They don't produce PowerPoint presentations. I don't have time for emotional vagueness, she said, taking the papers and aligning them into a perfect stack. This is cleaner. Cleaner. Sure. Like surgical gloves are clean. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. So, let me get this straight. You think this spreadsheet's going to fix our marriage? It's not about fixing, she said, turning back to her laptop. It's about maintaining order. You want fairness. Here it is. I didn't ask for this, I said. You asked for equality. Yeah, not an IRS audit. She kept typing. Dave, if you have any issues, you can make amendments. There's a comments tab. I stared at her, at the cold precision in her movements, the way she typed without even looking at me. Somewhere between the coffee fight and now, my wife had turned into a human calculator. Finally, I said, You know what, Claudia? I'm impressed. That got her attention. She looked up suspicious. You are. Absolutely. This is thorough, detailed, painfully fair. I mean, the level of obsession here? Brilliant. Her eyes narrowed. Don't patronize me. I'm serious. It's genius. Just one small suggestion. What? You missed laundry detergent. Her mouth opened slightly. What? I nodded, perfectly straight-faced. Laundry detergent. We both wear clothes, right? And you do more dry cleaning than I do. That's a shared resource with disproportionate use. You might want to add that under household consumables. Maybe a new subtab. She stared at me for a long, silent moment. Then she said, You're mocking me. Never, I said, hiding my grin behind my coffee mug. I'm supporting data accuracy. She slammed her laptop shut. You're insufferable. 50% insufferable, I said. Her eyes flashed. That same mix of fury and disbelief she wore when the espresso machine attacked her. Without another word, she grabbed the stack of papers and marched to her office, the sharp sound of her heels echoing down the hallway. The door closed. Hard. I exhaled slowly, smirking to myself. Biscuit, who'd been lying under the table the whole time, looked up at me as if asking whether it was safe to breathe again. She's really gone full spreadsheet mode, huh? I muttered, scratching his head. He gave a quiet whine. Yeah, I know, buddy, I said. But this is going to be fun. That night, after Claudia had retreated to bed without a word, I sat at my desk under the dim light of the lamp, a cup of cold coffee beside me. I opened my laptop. The glow of the screen reflected on the glass of the window, where the city lights flickered faintly in the distance. For a moment, I just sat there, thinking about her precision, her control, her determination to quantify everything that used to be simple. Then, slowly, I opened a new spreadsheet. At the top, I typed, Unpaid labor, retrospective invoice. And beneath that, coffee preparation, per cup, laundry loads completed, per week, dinner preparation, per hour, emotional support rendered, non-billable. I smiled faintly. If she wanted numbers, I'd give her numbers. Operation Petty Revenge had officially entered Phase 2. Chapter 4, The Invoice of Truth. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. Not because I had somewhere to be, but because I had something to finish. The glow of the laptop screen still flickered faintly from the night before. The spreadsheet opened like a silent confession. The house was quiet. Claudia's side of the bed was empty. She was already in the shower. I could hear the faint rhythm of water hitting tile, steady, efficient, just like her. I sipped my coffee, cracked my knuckles, and got back to work. The file name read, Invoice of Truth.xlsx. Underneath the title, the subtitle, just for my own satisfaction, said, In recognition of 7 years of unacknowledged service and domestic labor. I started with the basics. Category 1. Morning coffee production. 2 cups per day, 7 years equals 5,110 cups. Average cafe price, $3.50 per cup. Total, $17,885. I chuckled. Should have started a coffee shop. Then came Category 2. Meal preparation. I've been cooking dinner almost every night since we got married. 7 years times 300 days, accounting for takeout and her mom's visits. That's 2,100 meals. If I billed at $15 per meal, a conservative home chef rate, that came to $31,500. Fair's fair, I muttered, typing the numbers in bold. Next, groceries transported and sorted. Every Saturday, me, 2 shopping bags per hand, rain or shine. If I billed at $10 per grocery run for manual labor, that was $3,640. Dog walks with biscuit. Twice daily, every day for 7 years. That's over 5,000 walks. At $5 per walk, low-end market rate, $25,550. Biscuit, you hearing this? I said softly. The dog wagged his tail lazily from his bed. You owe me half your allowance. Then came a more abstract category. Category 5. Emotional support and spousal maintenance. This was the fun one. Comforting her through office drama. 312 incidents. Reassuring her about her boss. 89 times. Listening to her friends gossip while pretending to care. Countless. I set a modest listening fee of $25 per incident. Then I added a subcategory. Encouragement during PMS/stress cycles. That one I valued at $50 each. It wasn't bitterness driving me, it was logic. Claudia had created the system. I was just playing by her rules. Next, I added unpaid handyman work, fixing lamps, clogged sinks, changing bulbs, tightening cabinet hinges. $15 per task times 100 equals $1,500. Laundry folding, shared household labor, $2,200. Miscellaneous affectionate gestures, hugs, foot rubs, anniversary surprises. Retroactive emotional compensation, $3,000. Finally, I reached the best part, the grand total line. I tallied it up, formatted the cell in bold black font, and added a small note below it. Total balance due, $85,275. Payment due within 30 days unless otherwise negotiated. And just for flair, I added a final line italicized. All services previously rendered in good faith. Reassessed under the new 50-50 partnership policy. I leaned back, stretching. The morning sun cut through the blinds, streaking gold lines across the desk. It felt good, balanced. I hit print. The machine hummed to life, spitting out the pages one by one. Each sheet looked satisfyingly professional, columns, categories, neat totals, and small sarcastic footnotes like, Note, includes emotional tax. Note, service performed voluntarily, but without formal recognition. When it was done, I stacked them neatly, stapled the corner, and slipped them into a cream envelope. On the front, I wrote in black ink, To Claudia, client ID 001, shared residence account. I placed it on her pillow, perfectly centered. By the time she got out of the shower, I was already dressed and pretending to read the news on my tablet. She came out wrapped in a towel, hair dripping. You're up early. Couldn't sleep, I said without looking up. She glanced at the bed. What's that? Just some paperwork, I said casually. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, curiosity already piqued. Paperwork? Something for you. Part of our new system. She gave a little snort. What a petty note. Something like that. She didn't touch it right away. She went to the dresser, dried her hair a bit more, pretending to ignore it. But curiosity is a powerful drug. After a few minutes, she finally picked it up. You really left me a letter? Technically, an invoice. Her head snapped up. An invoice. Yep, you inspired it. She tore open the flap, half amused, half exasperated. The pages unfolded in her hands. Her lips twitched as she scanned the title, Invoice of Truth. "Oh, for God's sake," she muttered. "You're ridiculous." I stayed silent, sipping coffee, watching her eyes dart across the first few lines. Her laughter started small, a single chuckle, then two. "You charged me for coffee." "I charged you for 7 years of coffee," I said smoothly. She laughed harder, shaking her head. "This is insane. $17,000 for coffee." "Inflation," I said simply. She kept reading, flipping the pages faster now. "Oh my God, you actually itemize grocery runs? Dog walks. Every service counts." She laughed again, wiping a tear from her eye. "You're seriously deranged." Then, somewhere between emotional support and unpaid handyman labor, the laughter began to fade. Her voice quieted. "Wait," she frowned slightly, eyes tracing the sentences more slowly now. Her smile faltered. "Consoling after stressful workdays, encouraging words before presentations, surprise gifts to maintain morale." She turned the page. "Listening without interruption during rants, 312 times." I didn't say anything, just watched her face shift from amusement to unease. Her fingers slowed as she reached the bottom line. The total stared back at her, $85,275, bold, black, and undeniable. She exhaled. "You're joking." I didn't respond. Her eyes flicked up to mine. "Dave, this isn't funny anymore." "I didn't mean it to be funny," I said quietly. "Just fair." "Fair," she repeated, her tone sharp now. "You're actually billing me?" "Under the 50-50 rule, yes." She opened her mouth, then closed it again at a rare loss for words. Finally, she said, "You can't be serious." I shrugged. "You taught me to track things accurately. I'm just following your example." She looked down again at the papers, the neat tables, the sarcastic notes that didn't feel so funny anymore. I could see in her eyes the realization that every joke, every number, had a little bit of truth buried underneath. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. She just stared. Then, quietly, she folded the papers, placed them back in the envelope, and set it on the nightstand. "Okay," she said finally, her voice low, unreadable. "You've made your point." I gave a small smile. I didn't think I had yet. She didn't respond. Just grabbed her phone, her bag, and left the room. The door clicked shut behind her. The silence that followed was thick, not angry, not calm, just loaded. I leaned back in my chair, exhaled slowly, and looked toward Biscuit. He tilted his head, tail flicking uncertainly. "Yeah," I murmured. "She's not laughing anymore." I glanced at the empty side of the bed, the envelope sitting like a quiet detonator. The war had begun, and for the first time, I wasn't the one caught off guard. Chapter 5, Dividing the Kingdom. The blue tape appeared on a Tuesday. At first, I thought Claudia was doing one of her art projects again. She sometimes liked to photograph geometric shapes, or domestic symmetry, as she called it. But then I saw the roll of painter's tape in her hand, her expression flat and meticulous as she crouched by the living room floor, dragging that bright blue line straight down the center of our beige carpet. No camera, no art, just a vision. "Claudia," I said, lowering my coffee mug slowly, "are you doing home renovations or marking a crime scene?" She didn't even glance up. "I'm creating boundaries." "Boundaries?" "Yes. Clear, visible, enforceable boundaries." "You wanted 50-50, this is it. 50% space, 50% access." She tore the tape sharply, the sound slicing through the quiet room like a declaration of war. I leaned against the counter, half amused, half incredulous. "So this is your response to my invoice?" "This," she said, standing up and pointing toward the tape, "is fairness in its purest form. You can have your side, I'll have mine. No more confusion, no more overlap." I took a slow sip of coffee. "You're serious?" "As serious as your little spreadsheet stunt." She moved methodically, measuring her next section with the focus of a surgeon. The line extended through the living room, across the couch, down the hallway, and straight into the bedroom. I followed her silently, watching this act of domestic warfare unfold. When she reached the bedroom, she paused, assessing the layout. Left side's mine. Of course it is, I muttered. You always take the left. Then there shouldn't be a problem. I watched her tape a line right down the middle of the bed, perfectly straight, ending just before Biscuit's dog bed. The dog looked up, blinking, as if trying to make sense of the new border. Claudia stepped back and admired her work. There, balanced. You're out of your mind, I said, half laughing. Maybe, but at least now it's clear who owns what. She walked back toward the living room, continuing her tape crusade, across the coffee table, past the kitchen doorway. When she reached the kitchen, she stopped and studied the appliances. The sink's on my side, she announced. Fantastic, I said. I always wanted the coffee machine anyway. Her head snapped toward me. You can't just claim that. Why not? It's technically on my side of the line. She checked. It was just barely. That's absurd. 50-50. I reminded her, echoing her own words. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Fine. Enjoy your little machine. I will. For the next hour, I watched her go around the condo like a meticulous architect of madness. She labeled drawers, split the bathroom counter, and even placed a tiny square of tape on the shared mirror, dividing our reflections. When she finished, she stood in the doorway, hands on hips, surveying her kingdom, two halves of a once-whole home. There, she said. Now it's fair. I looked around. The blue lines ran through our lives like fault lines. Half the couch, half the bed, half the counter, half the soul of this place. Fair, I repeated quietly. Sure. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just nodded, walked to my side of the apartment, and began my counter operation. I started with labels. Sticky notes, neatly printed, color-coded. Coffee machine, property of Dave. Biscuit's food bowl, shared asset under observation. TV remote, joint usage under cooperative clause. Claudia walked by as I stuck a label onto the cabinet. What are you doing? Making sure everything's properly documented, I said. Her eyebrows shot up. You're mocking me. Absolutely not. I'm maintaining clarity. She rolled her eyes, muttering, You're insufferable, as she disappeared into her side of the bedroom. I kept labeling. My laptop, my books, my slippers, even my half of the couch cushion. Every tag was a tiny flag planted in occupied territory. When I was done, I stood in the doorway and admired my work. The place looked insane, tape lines, sticky notes, two people coexisting in parallel universes separated by a strip of blue. Biscuit wandered into the middle of the room, nose twitching at the tape. He pawed it once, then looked at me, confused. Don't cross that line, I whispered dramatically. It's international territory now. He cocked his head, then trotted straight to my side and curled up beside my feet. I smiled. Good boy. You've chosen wisely. That evening, the tension was almost comical. Claudia came home from work and walked around like a soldier inspecting enemy territory. She noticed the new labels, the careful positioning of my things, and the dog's strategic alliance. So, this is your response? She said dryly, setting her purse down on her half of the counter. Just adapting, I said, flipping through a magazine. You think this is funny? A little, I admitted. But mostly it's practical. We can live peacefully this way. She crossed her arms. You really think you can handle this level of pettiness? I smiled faintly. Claudia, you forget, I used to work in marketing. Petty is my playground. Her lips twitched like she wanted to smile, but refused to give me the satisfaction. Instead, she walked over to the couch, sat on her half, and turned on the TV. Unfortunately for her, the remote was on my side. Hand it over, she said. It's on my side. Dave. 50-50, remember? Boundaries. She exhaled sharply, stood up, and walked around the tape line to grab it, then froze. I pointed at the tape with mock solemnity. Violation. You're impossible, she hissed, snatching the remote anyway. Invoice incoming, I said with a grin. She ignored me, flipping through channels with visible irritation. Biscuit hopped up next to me on the couch, my side, of course, tail wagging. She glanced at the dog. Really, Biscuit? Traitor. Biscuit yawned, stretched, and laid his head on my leg. I reached down and scratched behind his ears. He's just following the natural order of things. Claudia turned the volume up louder than necessary. The sound of commercials filled the air, drowning out the silence. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring every drop, letting her frustration simmer. Later that night, we both got ready for bed in total silence. She brushed her teeth on her side of the sink. I used mine. Even the toothbrushes were separated by a bright blue line of tape. At one point, we both reached for the toothpaste at the same time. Our hands paused midair, fingers brushing for just a second before she recoiled, straightening her posture. "Go ahead," she said curtly. I squeezed the tube, careful not to cross the line, and set it back dead center. The tension in that bathroom could have powered a small city. When we finally got into bed, the division felt absurd. The blue line cut right down the mattress like a surgical scar. She lay facing the wall. I lay facing the ceiling. The tape glowed faintly under the bedside lamp. After a few minutes, Biscuit trotted in, circled twice, and, as if guided by fate, plopped down squarely on my side. Claudia sighed. "Of course. Dog's no energy," I murmured. She didn't respond. Biscuit shifted, pressing his back against my leg, tail thumping softly. I smiled into the dark. It wasn't much, but it felt like a win. A small, silent, golden retriever, shaped victory. As I closed my eyes, I thought about the absurdity of it all. Two grown adults living like Cold War diplomats inside a condo. And yet, under the pettiness, under the laughter I was fighting to hold in, there was something sharper, something real. This wasn't just tape. It was a map of everything that had gone wrong between us. Still, for now, I had my side, my coffee, and my dog. That was enough. Chapter 6, The Petty Cold War. The first shot of the Cold War came from the washing machine. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind of lazy day that used to mean brunch, half-hearted Netflix, and biscuit sprawl between us. But that was before the blue tape, before the spreadsheets, before our home became a geopolitical battlefield divided by labels and passive aggression. I was in my little office corner, typing out a resume that no longer felt urgent, when I heard her voice from the laundry room. "Dave." There was a tone in her voice, cautious, almost too calm. "Yeah." I called back. A pause. Then, "You might want to check your shirt." I frowned. "Which one?" "Your navy one. The button-up. That was my favorite. The one I wore to interviews, dinners, our anniversary trips." I stood up slowly, suspicion prickling. When I reached the laundry room, she was standing by the dryer, arms folded, trying to look innocent but failing spectacularly. The shirt was in her hands, or rather, what remained of it. It had shrunk to a tragic, toddler-sized version of itself. I stared at it. What did you do?" "I washed it. In hot water?" She winced. "Maybe. I didn't check the label." "You didn't check the—" I cut myself off, exhaling sharply. "Of course you didn't." She tilted her chin, defensive. "It was an accident. I took the shirt from her, holding it up. It barely reached my waist. This isn't an accident. This is a casualty. Drama much?" I looked at her, calm, deliberate. "You know, Claudia, in a 50-50 marriage, we account for damages." Her eyebrows rose. "Excuse me." "Laundry negligence," I said evenly. "It's a serious offense." She laughed, that disbelieving, sharp laugh that always meant she thought I was bluffing. "You're not actually going to invoice you," I said, cutting her off. "Oh, I absolutely am." She blinked. "You wouldn't dare." "Watch me." 10 minutes later, she was in the kitchen when her phone buzzed. "Payment request from Dave, $40. She opened it, and there it was. Item: shirt replacement fee description. Navy button-up, destroyed in hot wash. Terms: net 7 days. No refunds. I stood in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, expression neutral. She looked up at me. "You actually sent a Venmo request?" "Accountability," I said simply. "It's the backbone of any successful partnership." Her lips twitched. She stared at the screen for a few seconds, then, to my astonishment, tapped accept. A soft chime sounded. "Payment complete." She met my gaze with a raised brow. "Happy?" I smirked. "Ecstatic. We're finally running this marriage like a business." "Congratulations," she said dryly. "You've officially turned love into bookkeeping." "Correction," I said, walking away. "You turned love into bookkeeping. I just learned to balance the books." A week later, the war escalated again, this time with cufflinks. Claudia had an event, some charity gala, full of rich smiles and colder hearts. She stood by her vanity, rifling through jewelry boxes, muttering, "Can't find my earrings, everything's mismatched." Then her eyes flicked to my dresser, specifically the small velvet box I kept there. "Oh no," I said immediately. "What?" "I know that look. That's the look you give when you're about to borrow something expensive and pretend it's a small favor." She smiled faintly. "Can I borrow your silver cufflinks? They go perfectly with my blazer. They're not even the same gender of accessory." She rolled her eyes. "They're unisex. Fashion's evolved." I sighed. "You'll lose them." "I won't." "You said that about the umbrella." "That was one time." "And the portable charger." "Dave." I crossed my arms. "Rent's due." She blinked. "Rent." I pulled out a notepad from my drawer. "Cufflink rental, $15 flat rate, plus a $30 refundable deposit for loss or damage." She laughed out loud. "You're ridiculous." "Standard policy." She smirked, playing along now. "Fine, but I want a receipt." "You're joking." "Business is business," she said, echoing my own tone from before. So I grabbed a pen, scribbled on a sticky note, and handed it to her. "Cufflink rental agreement, client, Claudia deposit, $30/rental fee, $15/condition. Excellent." She took it with mock solemnity. "Thank you, Mr. Accountant. Please return them by 10 a.m. tomorrow," I said. "Late returns incur a 5% fee." Duly noted. As she left for her event, I couldn't help but grin. The next morning, there was an envelope on my side of the dresser. Inside, the cufflinks polished and safe, and a folded receipt with a $15 bill clipped to it. A note was scribbled beneath. "Returned in excellent condition. Pleasure doing business with you." I shook my head, half laughing. This was insane, utterly ridiculous. And yet, it worked. We weren't screaming anymore. No slammed doors, no sarcastic digs over dinner. Just clean transactions and professional courtesy, as if emotions were liabilities and invoices were safer than honesty. Our fights had turned into formal negotiations. When the trash overflowed on her side, she sent me a maintenance request. When I accidentally used her almond milk, I got a product consumption notice. It was absurd and strangely peaceful. One night, as we ate silently on opposite ends of the couch, 2 frozen dinners, each purchased separately, Claudia broke the quiet. "You realize," she said, spearing a piece of chicken, "we talk more now than we have in the last 2 years." I looked up from my plate. "Through invoices, yeah. Still counts." "Barely." She set her fork down, leaning back. "You think this is crazy, don't you?" I smiled. "Absolutely. But it's our kind of crazy." She chuckled softly. "You know, I actually don't hate it." "Of course you don't. You get to weaponize Excel sheets." "Correction," she said with a smirk. "We both do." Biscuit, lying between us, wagged his tail lazily, the only creature in the house still operating on pure emotion. Claudia reached down, scratching behind his ears. "At least he doesn't bill for affection." "Give him time," I muttered. "He learns fast." We both laughed, a small, genuine sound that hung awkwardly in the air afterward. For a few seconds, it almost felt normal again. Then my phone buzzed. A notification. Venmo request from Claudia, $12, shared streaming subscription. Netflix usage 40%. I stared at it, then looked at her. "You just..." She shrugged, smirking. "Business hours never close." I shook my head, smiling despite myself, and hit pay. "Receipt," she teased. "Already emailed." She laughed quietly, settling back against her side of the couch. "We're hopeless." "Hopeless," I agreed, taking another bite of my dinner, "but profitable." By the end of the week, our shared calendar was full of absurd entries. Monday, rent split recalibration meeting, 8:00 p.m. Wednesday, utility reconciliation review. Friday, pet food expense audit. We even started texting instead of arguing face-to-face. Claudia, dishwasher's full. Whose turn? Me. Yours. Check the rotation schedule. Sheet 2, tab kitchen duties. Claudia, you're unbearable. Me. Please submit that complaint in writing. She replied with a laughing emoji, the first one I'd seen from her in months. It was ridiculous, juvenile, petty beyond comprehension, yet somehow it kept us talking. I sat back that night, scrolling through our message thread, invoices, receipts, sarcastic notes, all written in polite business language, and realized something strange. In all this chaos, we built a new form of communication. Cold, calculated, structured, but communication nonetheless. The marriage had become a company, love replaced by ledger lines. And in some twisted, broken way, it worked. Chapter 7, The Mother-in-Law Attack. The knock came at exactly 9:03 a.m., sharp, authoritative, and unapologetically furious. I was in the middle of making my own coffee, my side's coffee machine, my beans, my mug, when the pounding came again. 3 knocks, perfectly spaced. The kind of knock that didn't ask permission to enter. I didn't need to look through the peephole. Only one person on earth knocked like that. Patricia Caldwell, Claudia's mother, the storm in pearls. I opened the door, and there she was, immaculate as ever, wrapped in a cream trench coat, sunglasses perched atop her silver streak hair like she'd just stepped off a Vogue cover shoot. She didn't greet me, didn't smile, just scanned me up and down, her lips tightening. "Well," she said coldly, "you look unemployed." I took a slow sip of coffee. "Morning, Patricia." "Don't morning me." She pushed past me like she owned the place. Her perfume, sharp and expensive, filled the condo before she even reached the living room. "Where's Claudia?" "Work," I said. "Of course," she snapped. "Someone has to have a job around here." I bit my tongue. I'd learned that arguing with Patricia was like arguing with gravity, useless and exhausting. She dropped her purse on Claudia's side of the couch, then turned, hands on hips. "So it's true. My daughter told me you two are splitting things. 50-50. That's right." Her eyes flashed. "As in, she has to make her own coffee now." I gestured toward the kitchen. "There's a machine. Works wonders." Her jaw tightened. "You have her making her own breakfast?" "She's an independent woman," I said lightly. "Didn't you raise her to be self-sufficient?" "That's not the point," she snapped. "The point is, you used to take care of her. You used to cook, clean, run this household while she focused on her career. Now, she tells me she has to do her own laundry." "Tragic," I said dryly. "Someone alert the United Nations." Patricia glared at me, eyes narrowing to slits. "Don't be smart with me, David. You know exactly what I mean." "Oh, I do," I said, leaning against the counter, calm as ever. "You think I'm punishing her, aren't you?" "No," I said. "I'm simply following her rules. 50-50, equal effort, equal responsibility." Patricia's nostrils flared. "Don't twist this into some noble stand. My daughter works 60-hour weeks to keep a roof over your head, and you're nickel-and-diming her for coffee." I smiled faintly. "Actually, yes. Would you like to see the rate sheet?" She blinked, caught off guard. "The what?" I turned to my desk, or rather, my designated financial operations zone, as I'd labeled it, and pulled out a single printed page, neatly formatted, complete with a letterhead that read, "Household Guest Service Policy, effective immediately, managed by D. L. Morgan." I handed it to her. She squinted and began reading aloud, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Coffee, $2.50 per cup, includes cream and sugar. Laundry services, $10 per load, detergent surcharge, $2. Meal preparation, $15 per serving, plus cost of ingredients. Pet care, $5 per walk, complimentary treat provided. Emotional labor surcharge, variable, determined post-interaction." She looked up at me slowly. "You cannot be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," I said. "All guests are subject to the same policy." "I'm not a guest." "Well," I said, sipping my coffee, "you don't live here, and you didn't make a reservation." Her mouth fell open. "Reservation? Usually 24 hours notice," I added helpfully. "We've had to tighten things up around here since the new rules took effect." For a moment, she was silent, stunned into disbelief. Then, as if regaining her footing, she squared her shoulders. "You've completely lost your mind." I shrugged. "Maybe, but I'm billing fairly." Patricia slammed the paper down on the counter. "Do you have any idea how ridiculous this is? Do you have any idea how exhausting unpaid emotional labor is?" I countered calmly. I kept receipts. Her jaw dropped. Receipts. 7 years of them, I said. Breakfasts, errands, birthdays planned, groceries lugged up 3 flights of stairs. Retroactive invoicing is a nightmare. She stared at me as if I'd sprouted horns. You're weaponizing paperwork. Claudia started the system. I reminded her. I just professionalized it. She turned away, muttering under her breath. Unbelievable, utterly unbelievable. Then, suddenly, she spun back toward me, pointing a manicured finger. You listen to me, young man. I don't care what petty accounting games you two are playing, but my daughter deserves to be treated with respect. I met her gaze evenly. She's being treated with precision. Patricia's voice rose an octave. Precision? Marriage isn't about precision, David. It's about care, about showing up, about doing things for each other because you want to, not because there's a damn price tag attached. Her words hung in the air, raw and cutting. For the first time, I hesitated, just a flicker of silence between us. Then I said quietly, You're right. But she ended that when she said she was only responsible for herself. Patricia's fury faltered. For a brief second, I saw something human in her, disappointment, maybe even sadness. You two were good together, she said softly. You really were. I don't know what happened. Neither do I admitted. Maybe we both stopped keeping score until it was too late, and now that we are, all we see are numbers. She exhaled slowly, her expression softening just for a heartbeat. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the warmth vanished. The armor went back up. She grabbed her purse and straightened her coat. You're a fool if you think this circus can last. I smiled faintly. You're not the first person to call it that. I'm serious, she said, pointing again. When this collapses, and it will get a good lawyer. You'll need one. I chuckled. Already bookmarked a few. Patricia blinked, perhaps unsure whether I was joking or deadly serious. Then she muttered, God help you both, and stormed toward the door. Don't forget to validate your parking, I called after her. Guests get the first hour free. She froze for half a second, shoulders stiff, then kept walking, slamming the door behind her so hard that Biscuit barked from the bedroom. I stood there in the echo of her exit, sipping my coffee, staring at the guest policy, paper still crumpled on the counter. For a moment, I wondered if she was right, if all of this, every invoice and Venmo and taped line down the hall, was just a slow-motion implosion disguised as order. But then Biscuit trotted in, tail wagging, looking up at me expectantly. Hey, buddy, I said softly, bending down to scratch behind his ears. Guess it's just you and me against the auditors. He wagged harder, his tail thumping against the floor. Good boy, I murmured. You're the only one around here who doesn't owe me anything. I poured myself another cup of coffee, set the mug down beside the service policy, and sat quietly in the stillness Patricia had left behind. The war hadn't just escalated, it had gone intergenerational. And for the first time, I wasn't sure who was really winning. Chapter 8, going viral. It started as a joke. A late night, slightly bitter, caffeine-fueled kind of joke, the kind you don't think anyone will ever read. But by the next morning, my inbox was melting. The post was titled, My Wife Invoiced Me for Coffee. A Modern Marriage Experiment. I wrote it in one sitting, somewhere between midnight and 3 a.m., with Biscuit curled up at my feet and the faint blue tape dividing our condo glowing under the kitchen light. I hadn't planned it. It just spilled out. The words, the absurdity, the numbers, the quiet war Claudia and I were fighting in the name of fairness. I described how my wife, successful, immaculate, decisive, had announced we were splitting everything 50-50 after I lost my job. How I'd responded not with anger, but with an Excel sheet. How the great coffee cold war had begun. The post was sarcastic, yes, but there was truth underneath every sentence. I uploaded it to Medium, hit publish, and went to bed thinking nothing of it. By sunrise, my phone was vibrating nonstop. At first, I thought something was wrong, a billing alert, maybe, or another rejection email from one of the 20 job applications I'd sent that week. But when I unlocked the screen, I froze. 2,463 notifications. Then 5,000. Then 10,000. The post had gone viral. Are you serious? I muttered to myself as I scrolled through the comments. Some are laughing. Bro, this is gold. My wife just sent me a PayPal request for gas money. We're not even fighting. I want a 50-50 marriage until it's time to take out the trash. Others were outraged. You're weaponizing emotional labor. Do better. His wife sounds like a legend. She's doing what women have been expected to do for centuries. Now he's crying about it. Then there were the ones that made me pause. This is so sad. These two don't hate each other. They just forgot how to be on the same team. That one stung. By noon, the post had been shared by several relationship bloggers, 2 talk show hosts, and 1 financial influencer who titled his tweet, "Forget crypto, invest in pettiness." I stared at the analytics graph on my laptop, a sharp blue spike climbing straight up. It was ridiculous. Unreal. At 2 p.m., my old friend Liam called. "Dude, you're famous." "Hardly," I said, rubbing my temple. "Hardly? Bro, I just saw your article on BuzzLoop. They used a stock photo of a guy making coffee angrily. That's you, man." I snorted. "I don't even look angry when I make coffee." "Well, you do now," Liam laughed. "You trending, my guy. 50-50 marriage is all over Twitter." I opened the app, and sure enough, there it was. The hashtag was sitting comfortably in the top 10 trends. People were posting memes of coffee mugs labeled $2.50, of couples drawing tape lines across beds, and screenshots of invoices captioned "Love in 2025. It was chaos. Beautiful, hilarious chaos. But the real shock came that evening. Claudia came home late, heels clicking sharply against the tile. She looked tired, her designer bag hanging loosely at her side. She didn't say hello, just dropped the bag on the counter and said, "So, you wrote about me." Ah, there it was. I closed my laptop slowly. "You read it." "Read it?" she said, voice clipped. I had 3 coworkers send it to me before lunch. "Is this about you?" they asked. "You're the coffee invoicing wife, right?" "Technically, yes," I said carefully. She crossed her arms. "You made me look like a monster." "I didn't use your name," I said. "No one knows it's you." "Half the people at my firm do," she snapped. "You mentioned our dog, our condo layout, the painter's tape. How many couples do you think have done that?" I hesitated. "Statistically speaking, probably don't," she warned. "Don't you dare throw statistics at me right now." We stared at each other, the same kind of quiet tension that had filled the restaurant that night when she'd first said 50-50. Finally, she sighed, rubbing her temples. "You couldn't have asked me first? I didn't think anyone would read it," I admitted. She studied me for a long moment, then said, softer now, "You really thought no one would care?" "Yeah," I said. "Just a guy venting online." There was a pause, then she smirked. "Well, congratulations. You're a viral venting sensation." I blinked. "Wait, you're not mad?" "Oh, I'm mad," she said, grabbing a bottle of wine. "But I'm also curious." "Curious? Do people hate me?" I hesitated. "Half of them think you're a feminist icon." That made her stop mid-pour. "Really?" "Oh yeah," I said. Hashtags, think pieces, even one podcast episode titled "The Empowered Accountant Wife." Her lips twitched into something dangerously close to a smile. "The what?" "The Empowered Accountant Wife," I repeated. "Someone said you're redefining marriage economics." Claudia tilted her head, pretending to think. "That doesn't sound too bad." "See? You're famous too," I said with a grin. She shot me a look. "Don't get smug. Wouldn't dream of it." For a few seconds, the tension cracked, replaced by something almost nostalgic. The ghost of our old banter. Then she shook her head, grabbed her glass, and walked away muttering, "You're still an idiot." By the end of the week, the blog had 1.2 million views. I started getting emails from editors, offers to write follow-up pieces. One from a lifestyle site read, "Loved your humor and honesty. Would you consider turning this into a series? Something like the 50-50 Diaries." I stared at the email for a long time. Then I looked at my own spreadsheet, the one where I tracked job rejections, interview attempts, and dwindling savings. Maybe I thought this was something, so I wrote another entry. Date 12, the tape line truce. Then another. Date 18, the Venmo apocalypse. Each post was funnier, sharper, more brutally honest. And people loved it. Soon, companies reached out, coffee brands, finance apps, even a streaming service offering me sponsorship. It was surreal. The same argument that had wrecked my confidence, that had turned my marriage into a spreadsheet battle, was now paying the bills. One morning, while typing another post, Claudia came up behind me with her mug, her sides coffee mug, naturally, and peered at the screen. "What's this one about?" she asked. "Household invoices and marital diplomacy," I said. She smirked. "You make it sound like foreign policy." "In a way," I said, typing another line, "it kind of is." She rolled her eyes, but didn't argue. Instead, she sipped her coffee quietly beside me, reading as I wrote. For a moment, the silence between us wasn't tense, it was comfortable, familiar. Two people sharing space again, even if divided by blue tape and irony. I finished the last paragraph, hit publish, and leaned back. The post title glowed on the screen. The 50-50 Diaries. How we turned marriage into an Excel sheet and accidentally found ourselves again. When I looked over, Claudia was smiling faintly, the kind of smile that didn't belong to the spreadsheet queen, but to the woman I'd married. "Not bad," she said quietly. I grinned. "Wait till you see the ad revenue." She rolled her eyes, but there was laughter in it this time. And for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't resentment or pride. I felt hope. Chapter 9, Fame, Fire, and Reflection. The notoriety hit us like a freight train. It wasn't just Medium anymore. Not just the memes, or the Twitter threads, or the 50-50 marriage hashtag that trended for 3 consecutive days. No, it had spread further, faster, like a wildfire fueled by absurdity and envy. By the start of the week, our faces, or at least the conceptual versions of us, were everywhere. There were think pieces dissecting our domestic accounting system, as though we were case studies in sociology. Marriage in the age of Excel. When love becomes ledger lines, the petty Cold War. A modern marriage parable. Memes circulated showing Claudia holding a calculator with the caption, "I'm not controlling, I'm auditing." Another depicted me sitting behind a fortress of invoices, sipping coffee and glaring at the camera like some beleaguered CEO of marital finance. Claudia was furious. "Do you realize what you've done?" she demanded one morning as I scrolled through my notifications. Her designer blazer hung perfectly on her shoulders, but her jaw was tight, unyielding. "The entire internet thinks I'm a tyrant." I barely looked up. "Half of them think you're a feminist hero." Her eyes narrowed. "Half. And the other half. They think I'm a martyr," I said calmly, sipping my coffee. "It balances out." She stalked past me to the kitchen, tossing her purse on the counter with a force that rattled the coffee machine. "Do you hear yourself? Martyr, hero, Excel warrior. We're not people anymore. We're characters." I set the laptop down, folding my hands in mock solemnity. Perhaps we always were. The only difference now is that the world finally noticed. Her glare could have melted steel. "You're impossible." "I prefer strategically challenging," I corrected. Claudia exhaled sharply and leaned against the counter, hands on her hips. "This isn't funny. I'm being interviewed today. About the 50-50 thing." She gestured vaguely at the blue tape, the invoices, the dog that had somehow become a minor celebrity in its own right. "They want my take on modern equality, partnership, boundaries, I don't know, buzzwords." I nodded. "Sounds informative." She shot me a look that could stop traffic. "Informative? It's humiliating. People are dissecting my life like it's a case study in oppression." "Or empowerment," I said carefully. She paused, one hand midair, adjusting her bracelet. "Wait, empowerment." "Yes," I said. "Apparently you're a role model now. For independence, for self-sufficiency, for invoicing spouses efficiently." Claudia blinked. The corner of her mouth twitched. "They admire me? Some do. Others think you're terrifying." "It's balanced." She laughed, a short, sharp, almost disbelieving laugh. "They actually think I'm terrifying?" I shrugged. "You told me yourself. You like efficiency. They just gave you a spotlight." She leaned back, crossing her arms, a thoughtful frown settling in. "So if you lean into it," I said slowly, "you become the CEO of modern marriage." "CEO of marriage," she repeated, testing the words. Then she tilted her head, smirking for the first time in weeks. That's not the worst title I've ever heard. Over the next few days, she did just that. Interviews, podcasts, Zoom calls, the works. She spoke eloquently about equality, accountability, and how partnerships could thrive on respect and clearly defined boundaries. She framed the 50-50 system as a deliberate, empowering choice, rather than the passive-aggressive battlefield that it started as. I watched it all from the corner of our condo, the one I had meticulously labeled with sticky notes, of course. Biscuit sat on my lap as I scrolled through video clips, tweets, and snippets of online articles. People were sharing screenshots of Claudia explaining her philosophy on NPR, posting quotes like true equality in a relationship is measured, tracked, and respected in spreadsheets or otherwise. I couldn't decide if I was impressed, horrified, or both. The thing was, I realized this wasn't our life anymore. It was a performance. Claudia, brilliant and poised, playing the part of the feminist icon. Me, the beleaguered, witty husband, documenting the absurdity for the audience. We were both in character, but the real emotion, the small, private fights, the laughter over a misplaced invoice, the quiet victories with Biscuit choosing my side of the couch, that all belonged to a past version of us. I sipped my coffee, watching her animatedly discuss emotional labor tracking in a podcast interview. She gestured with her hands, articulate and commanding, her words polished, rehearsed, and yet somehow genuine. Millions could see her now. Millions could judge. Millions could share and debate. And she was thriving. I typed a note into my laptop. Day 33. Marriage is now a brand. Emotional currency converted into content. Biscuit growled softly, snapping me out of my reverie. He was curled up on the carpet, glancing from me to Claudia, like he understood the absurdity but had no interest in participating. I leaned back in my chair and thought about how far we drifted, not just from traditional normalcy, but from each other. The quiet intimacy, the spontaneous laughter, the shared mornings where coffee was just coffee, replaced now by invoices, blog posts, and social media commentary. It was ironic. The thing that had started as a petty retaliation, Operation Petty Revenge, had snowballed into something larger than life. Something public, something profitable, but also hollow. Claudia turned from the kitchen, holding her laptop and her coffee mug, striding toward me like a general surveying the battlefield. "Look at this," she said, plopping down beside me. "They're calling me the spreadsheet queen. Can you believe it?" I glanced at the laptop. Sure enough, a meme of her with a crown photoshopped over her head, a giant calculator in her hand. "I can believe it," I said. "It's the least surprising thing on the internet today." She laughed softly. A real laugh this time, lighter, not weighed down by indignation. "And you? Are you proud of your viral husband?" "Proud," I said slowly. "I'm reflective." She arched an eyebrow. "Reflective?" "Yeah," I said. "It's strange. We're famous. We're admired. People think they understand our marriage. But I'm not sure we do anymore." Claudia set her mug down and leaned back, considering. Maybe that's okay," she said softly. "We're adapting. We're surviving. And besides," she smiled wryly, "people love a little chaos with their morning coffee." I chuckled. True, but I miss when chaos didn't need to be monetized. She reached over, nudging my shoulder gently. "Maybe one day we'll get back to that. For now, we're brand." I sipped my coffee, looking around the condo, the blue tape, the labeled furniture, Biscuit curled on my lap, Claudia perched across from me like a queen on her throne. A brand, a business model, a viral sensation. And underneath it all, somewhere buried beneath spreadsheets, invoices, and online commentary, was the two of us, still here, still together, still trying to navigate love in the age of absurdity. It was surreal. It was exhausting. And it was, somehow, exactly where we were meant to be. Chapter 10. The tape between us. The condo was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes when the house is empty. No, this was a full, heavy quiet. The kind that settles when the chaos has drained itself and leaves only the echo of small, unresolved tensions. I sat on my side of the living room, the half of the couch I had claimed weeks ago with careful precision. Claudia sat on the opposite side, her legs tucked neatly under her, the posture of someone who had always been impeccably in control. Between us stretched the blue painter's tape, a thin, bright line marking territory, a battlefield boundary that had become both absurd and sacred. The evening was dim. Lamps cast soft halos across the furniture, but the tape caught the light in a way that made it almost glow, as if reminding us that the division was real, permanent, and oddly beautiful in its own way. Biscuit, sensing the tension and perhaps the futility of any attempt at mediation, had curled himself directly on top of the tape line. His golden fur shimmered in the lamp's glow, a living bridge between us, a small truce that neither of us had negotiated. He yawned and stretched, oblivious to human pride and pettiness, his tail wagging slowly against the floor. I sipped my coffee, feeling its warmth seep into my hands, a small comfort in a house where comfort had become transactional. You know, I began, hesitant, staring at the tape instead of her. I can't even remember what we were fighting for. Claudia didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed somewhere beyond me, perhaps out the window at the city lights, or perhaps deep in thought. The silence hung like a curtain, thick and heavy, yet somehow protective. I continued, lowering my voice. It started with, well, I lost my job, and you said, I gestured vaguely, my hands fall into my lap. You said you were only responsible for yourself. And then, everything just escalated. Still no response. Just a slow, deliberate exhale that could have been frustration, exhaustion, or resignation. I didn't press. Sometimes, silence was the most honest language. I glanced at the blue tape. The line was straight, perfect, almost clinical. It separated the couch, the rug, even half the coffee table. It had become more than tape, a symbol, a statement, a subtle, mocking monument to everything that had happened between us. Every invoice, every spreadsheet, every Venmo request seemed to trace itself back to this line. It was equality in its purest form, measured, exact, and utterly isolating. Claudia shifted slightly, the faintest sound in the quiet room, and Biscuit stirred, stretching over the tape. The dog's head rested squarely on the line, one paw on each side, and I couldn't help but smile despite myself. The universe, it seemed, had found the perfect mediator. You think this is funny? She asked finally, her voice low, controlled, but not unkind. Funny, I echoed. No, I think it's ironic, and tragic, and maybe just a little poetic. She raised an eyebrow, a smirk threatening the corner of her mouth. Poetic? You've gone full novelist now. I shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I just noticed the absurdity of it all. I gestured vaguely at the tape. This line, it's kind of impressive. You've always been meticulous. She allowed herself a small chuckle, soft, almost hidden. Is a good line. Straight. No wavering. Definitely me. And yet, I said slowly, leaning back, it also reminds me that we're separate. Equal, yes, but separate. That's the part that's hard. Her gaze softened, finally meeting mine across the thin, fluorescent barrier. Hard doesn't even begin to cover it, she admitted. I thought this would make things clearer, more fair, and it did. But clarity has a cost. I nodded, realizing she was speaking the truth we had both ignored for so long. Fairness, measured, precise, logged in spreadsheets and invoices, it had destroyed spontaneity. It had replaced care with calculation. Love had been recalibrated into arithmetic. I watched her fingers lightly trace the edge of her side of the couch, a habitual motion I remembered from years before. I remembered when I would sit here and we would talk about nothing for hours, when laughter wasn't calculated, when coffee wasn't a transaction. Do you ever miss it? I asked softly, almost whispering. Before all this? She paused, then nodded slightly. Every day. But we can't go back. Not really. I exhaled, feeling the weight of it. I know, but sometimes I wonder if we ever really went forward either. We sat in silence again, but this time it was different. Not tense or filled with the residual spark of petty war, but contemplative, reflective. Biscuit shifted, letting his body fully occupy the tape line, as if to remind us that life wasn't about sides, measurements, or control. It was about presence, even in small forms. "You think we're too far gone?" she asked quietly. I looked at her, considering. Maybe, but maybe distance isn't always loss. Maybe it's perspective. She tilted her head, considering this, and I realized she was thinking about the irony of our situation. How we had turned marriage into numbers, social media, a brand, and yet somehow still remained tethered by invisible strings that no spreadsheet could account for. Biscuit yawned, stretched, and nudged his nose against my hand. I reached down instinctively, scratching behind his ears. The dog's warmth, his small, uncomplicated affection, was a sharp contrast to the calculated chaos around us. "Do you remember," I said, tracing a finger along the tape without touching her side, "the first night we tried to make it work with the invoices? You laughed at me, and I swore I'd never forgive you." She snorted softly. "And yet here we are. Invoices, Venmo, spreadsheets, fame, and somehow still alive." "Alive," I echoed, "but what about us?" Claudia didn't answer immediately. She just watched the tape, the line that had become the tangible representation of both our equality and our estrangement. Then she exhaled slowly, her shoulders loosening ever so slightly. "Maybe we're just learning," she said. "Learning what works, what doesn't. Learning that balance isn't always pretty, but it's necessary." I nodded. Balance. The word felt hollow and full all at once. And yet, it's ironic, isn't it? We started this over a job loss, petty revenge, spreadsheets, and invoices, and now the world is watching, judging, debating, voting sides. And here we are, sitting quietly, the only ones who really know what's true. She didn't reply. Instead, she shifted slightly, letting her hand hover near Biscuit's back. The dog wagged, bridging the gap without concern. For a fleeting moment, I envied his simplicity. I glanced at the tape again, at the fluorescent line dividing us like a river of absurdity. Equal, divided, isolated, yet somehow contained. We had built a fortress of fairness, of rules, of self-respect, and now, in the quiet of the evening, it felt more like a tomb than a home. "You know," I said finally, my voice breaking the silence, "this line, it's perfect. Really perfect." Claudia's eyes flicked to it. "Perfect. Yes," I said. "It's everything we are. Equal, divided, utterly alone." Her gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. She didn't respond. The words lingered between us, unchallenged, accepted. Biscuit shifted, letting his head rest across the line, one paw on her side, one paw on mine. I reached down and scratched him behind the ears. "You get it, don't you?" I whispered. He wagged his tail. We sat there like that for a long time, coffee in hand, silence in place. The world outside debating who was right, who was wrong, who had invented the most absurd marital experiment. Inside, there was nothing but the quiet and the blue tape. The perfect symbol of our marriage. Equal, divided, utterly alone. And as the lights dimmed outside, and the city carried on without pause, I realized the full, ironic truth. The man who lost his job, the husband whose warmth had been measured and charged, the participant in a petty war of spreadsheets and invoices, he had gained fame. And yet, in that fame, in that viral chaos, he had also witnessed the slow death of fairness, the quiet fracture of intimacy, and the ultimate irony of it all. We were together. We were apart. And the blue tape between us said it all.